Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Morning Glory video. In today's episode we shall once again be casting our ever critical eye over the 10th edition Imperial Guard datasheets. And today we enter the realm of Forge World, taking a look at another obscure vehicle. Normally when we review one of these quirky, kooky tanks, often we focus on the kind of firepower or durability that they bring to the table. But today's review is going to be a bit different because this unit has neither firepower nor durability. It's a real strange one. It's entirely focused on supporting the other vehicles in your motor pool. Some say that amateurs discuss war and professionals discuss logistics. Well, if that's the case, then this is truly the most professional unit in our entire vehicle fleet. I am, of course, talking about the Trojan Support Vehicle. A rare sight on the battlefield. I don't think I've ever seen one of these things in the wild. The Trojan is one of those units that you could easily overlook. Why would you take this when you could take more firepower? But I've been having a closer gander at this thing. I've been scratching below the surface, and this might be spicy. This might be controversial, but I think it's got play. I think it has legitimate play in your Imperial Guard army list. I know, a bold Mordian Glory statement, if there has ever been one. And so I think I've got to back this up. I can't just say stuff like that and get away with it. So let's lift up the rock, have a look underneath, and dive right into today's episode. As is tradition, we shall begin with a brief overview of what the hell the Trojan Support Vehicle actually is. In the lore, the Trojan is a Chimera chassis which has given up nearly all of its weapons and instead has a big crane strapped to the top of it. And rather than carrying men around, it's just full of ammunition and spare parts. Its main job is to trundle around the battlefield to make sure that the big guns of your motor pool have still got lots of shells and bullets to fire. And if one of the tanks throws a track or takes a little bit of damage, the Trojan Support Vehicle can also act as an impromptu repair station. But that's all well and good in the fluff. How does that translate to the crunch? What does the Trojan Support Vehicle look like on the tabletop? Well, let's get into the unit now, and let's start off with the stat line at the top of the datasheet. With a movement value of 10, the Trojan can keep up with all but the speediest vehicles in the Guard, and with a toughness of 9, 3+ save, and 11 wounds, it's got an okay defensive stat line. Let's be clear here. Any dedicated anti-tank is going to make mincemeat out of this thing. It's going to core it out quickly. Pair of las cannons, maybe a trio at most, are going to knock this thing out. But any lighter heavy weapons, heavy bolters, shuriken cannons, their equivalent, any small arms, regular bolters, las bolts, anything like that, they're going to get shrugged off fairly easily. And at the end of the day, if your opponent is shooting their big anti-tank at your Trojan, either the game's gone horribly wrong and it's one of the last vehicles to get picked off at the end, or it's catching cracked rockets and las cannon beams for your more important vehicles, which actually plays well into your hand. Now, it's also got a leadership value of 7+, which is completely standard issue for the Guard, and an OC of 2. Look, at its core, it's a Chimera. That stat line is identical to the Chimera nearest damn it. And so if you're familiar with how tough a Chimera is and how fast a Chimera is, you're familiar with what the Trojan is able to do as well. As for its weapons, the Trojan comes with a mighty heavy bolter and armored tracks. And that's it. You can swap the heavy bolter out for heavy flamer, but you're probably not going to, as this thing is designed to sit back with a lot of your other vehicles and do some DACA, so it might as well actually throw some lead downrange. But it can take a hunter-killer missile. And I don't know why I'm getting so excited about that, because if the main weapon on a vehicle is a one-shot hunter-killer, it's not exactly doing a lot of damage. But you shouldn't think of the Trojan as a offensive vehicle. It's not. Where it comes into its own is how it can support the other units in your army. So it does that with its abilities. So let's take a look at what they are. The main ability of the Trojan is support vehicle. In your command phase, select one friendly Astra Militarum vehicle model within 3 inches of this model. That vehicle regains up to D3 lost wounds, and until the start of your next command phase, each time that vehicle model makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1. The same vehicle model cannot be selected for both this ability and the Regimental Engine Seer's Omnicized Blessing ability in the same turn, and each model can only be selected for this ability once per command phase. Now on the surface, this ability looks okay. You get to heal D3 wounds like a Tech Priest, and hey, you get to do some reroll 1s. That's kind of cool, I guess. But you might be thinking to yourself, but Morning, if I wanted to take a Tech Priest, I'd be taking it for the 4+ invulnerable save, and I could heal D3 wounds there. And if I wanted reroll 1s, why wouldn't I just take a Sentinel? Because Sentinel can do that with like Daring Recon. And hey, Sentinel could put it on the enemy unit, and then lots of people get reroll 1s against it, right? Well, you know what? I wouldn't even deny that. The Tech Priest is a great deal, 45 points, and he can put a 4+ invulnerable save on something, and also D3 wounds if something manages to sneak past and damage your Rogel Dawn, for example. But realistically, you're looking at the healing of D3 wounds almost as like a bonus. The main reason you're taking the Tech Priest is because you want the 4+ invulnerable save, right? So I would argue that the Trojan isn't actually in competition with the Tech Priest. If you think about it that way, you're looking at basically comparing 2 secondary factors. And you want to be looking at comparing the primary purpose of this vehicle, which in my mind is the reroll 1s. So that means that actually the Trojan is in competition with the Sentinel. And that's where I would argue we need to be focusing our attention. Attention, guardsmen! This is an announcement by the Departamento Militarum. Element Games is an official sponsor of the Mordian Glory channel. They offer up to 20% off Warhammer 40k and 10% off Bolt Action and other game systems. Use the link down in the description to save money and support the channel. Anyone not using the link will be referred to the local commissariat. Also, don't forget that if you use referral code TIM3921, then you will receive double store credit, saving even more money on your future purchases. That's all for now. Fallout! The advantage of bringing a Sentinel is that you put Daring Recon on the enemy unit. So multiple guard units can then benefit from the reroll 1s, and it's a great force multiplier. But it has a few disadvantages. Firstly, you have to get within 18 inches. And that can be quite difficult to do on a proper competitive 40k board. If you are going against a savvy opponent, most of their army is going to be hidden turn 1. And if it's not hidden, they're going to have some sort of scout move or redeploy. Well, you're not going to get line of sight. Often going first in a tournament can be a disadvantage unless you've sort of built for it, because you can't see the enemy and you kind of have to move out, overexpose yourself, and then die. So the Sentinel, sure, it can affect multiple units, but it has to be able to see them. It needs line of sight, which again is going to be tricky on a proper board with lots of line of sight blocking terrain, and it has to get in range, which it might struggle to do. If you go second, you don't want a scout move to get close, because the opponent's just going to move out and kill you on their first turn, aren't they? And then you've got the fact that when your Sentinel does get close, and if it does manage to get Daring Recon off, other units have to be able to see the thing you've just Daring Reconned. And again, we've just spoken about how difficult line of sight can be on certain boards. And secondly, your Sentinel's probably going to die, because it's just gone right into the Maelstrom, into the heart of darkness. It's going to be on the front lines. And Sentinels are relatively durable. You know, they're more durable than the Guardsman squad, but yeah, a bit of anti-tank's just going to sweep them away. And bear in mind, most people are building for anti-tank. We're on the cusp of a horde meta, but most people are still bringing enough anti-tank to kill one knight a turn every single time. That's like the metric, the litmus test. They're the gatekeeper for a reason. So I feel like no one's going to have any issue with killing sentinels. Now, sure, you could use reinforcements, but unless you're bringing a squadron of like 3 sentinels, using reinforcements on 1 sentinel probably isn't worth it. It doesn't feel worth it. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. I'd rather use my reinforcements on a big blob of Kriegers or Katachans than on a lone sentinel. The big thing that Daring Recon used to do was buff all of your guard artillery, right? You get Daring Recon on someone, if you somehow manage to pull it off, you get all those past all those barriers we've just mentioned, you get Daring Recon off, then your artillery can pound the enemy to crap, right? But guard artillery's gone through the roof now. No one is taking Earthshaker batteries or Medusa batteries. Most people are now taking their vehicle-based artillery like Basilisks and Manticores, if they're taking it at all. A lot of people are just going, well, I'll fall back on the mortar team. And I don't feel like you're going to take a bunch of sentinels to support your mortars, because then you're spending more points on the support of the unit than you are on the unit itself, because mortars are 60 points, the sentinel 60 points. If you're taking a big squad of sentinels to support a couple of mortar teams, it just, again, doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel efficient there. So while sentinels at the beginning of 10th were absolutely the bee's knees because they were really cheap, our guard artillery was cheap, they paired nicely, I think now the sentinel just isn't the best source of reroll 1s in your army. I feel like it's kind of resting on its laurels a little bit. And this is where I think the Trojan has a chance to shine. Because the Trojan doesn't need to get close to the enemy. The Trojan doesn't need line of sight to the enemy. Trojan can sit comfortably out behind a bit of terrain and never fire a shot and never see anything and just contribute to the battle every single turn. Your Sentinels might scoot forward, put reroll 1s on enemy unit, and for 1 turn, you get to blast the enemy unit. For 1 turn. Trojan might only be supporting 1 unit, but if it's a big unit, if it's an important one, if it's a big chonker, like a Dawn, or maybe a super heavy, something that it can really get its teeth into, then it's not supporting that vehicle for 1 turn, it's supporting that vehicle for 5 turns. Every turn of the game, baby. You just put those reroll 1s on there every single time. Without fail. If the main target goes down, you can pick another one of your guard vehicles to support. And I feel like the Trojan is so low priority on your enemy's kill list. And that might be for good reason. It might be because it's just terrible. But I feel like it's so low on your enemy's priority list that it's always going to have something it can support. It's always going to have a target for those rerolls. And there's another big thing to take into account. Probably the biggest reason, and that is, as always, the points cost. Everything comes down to points cost at the end of the day. You can have the best unit in the world, but if it doesn't cost the right amount, you're not going to take it. Well, a Scout Sentinel is 60 points after the recent point update. Trojan is only 80. And for that 20 points more, you're getting a vehicle that can go just as fast as a Sentinel, and it's got better toughness, and it's got more wounds, and it can use the ability from the beginning of the game every single turn. Doesn't have to get close or risk itself in any way. And don't forget, it can still repair things. It still has that in the back pocket. However, with all of this said, let's make something abundantly clear. It all comes down to how you're using your Sentinels. If you're taking a big squadron of 3, maybe 2 big squadrons of 3, and you're using them as frontline battle units, they're pushing onto objectives, they're movement blocking, they might even be binding in combat with those Sentinel chainswords, and Daring Recon is not the only reason you're including them in your army. They're performing a multi-role function within your force, then of course Scout Sentinels are vastly superior to the Trojan in that regard because they're doing so much more. But if you are taking a lone Scout Sentinel or two, and you're taking them just because you want to give some reroll ones out to your army, and you're finding that they're consistently dying and you're only really getting 1 or 2 turns out of them, then maybe in that circumstance, you should be considering the Trojan. If you're like me and you're getting to the end of like a list building session and you built a few lists and you keep finding that you've got like 30 points left over, 30, 40 points, and like, oh, I'll just chuck like a preacher in there, I don't know what else to do with it. Or, oh, I'll chuck in like a commissar, I don't know what to do with that 30 points. Before you just chuck in that random unit, just take a step back and just think, would you be better off spending that 20 points left over at the end of your list, turning one of your lone sentinels into a Trojan? Do you have the other units in your list that will benefit from that support vehicle? Long story short, I'm not saying that the Trojan is meta. I'm not saying that it's competitive, that it's going to start defining the tournament scene. I'm simply saying if you've got a few points left over, think about how you might want to use them. Of course, all of this is just like my opinion. And I am sure that a lot of people are going to have some thoughts on today's topic. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Is the Trojan maybe a little bit of a sleeper? Something that you might want to consider? Or is this going to become like the infamous Vanquisher video that I did all those years ago? If you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. So a massive thank you to Bon Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, August Vardy, and the Tommies. Thank you guys, your incredible support makes a huge difference and it is a big part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time. But that's all for now, thank you for watching and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.